My uncle's face went sheet white when his commanding officer stepped out of the vehicle at my graduation ceremony and saluted me sharply. "Colonel Williams, ma'am. I apologize for this misunderstanding." The handcuffs were still dangling from Uncle Raymond's trembling hands as he stared at the insignia on my dress uniform, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. That's impossible," he stammered. "She's just a dropout. A failure." His partner, Officer Dennings, took 3 steps back, horror dawning across his features as he recognized exactly who I was and what position I held. Not just in the military, but in the entire southeastern command structure. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. That moment of perfect vindication still makes me smile whenever I remember it. The absolute shock on Uncle Raymond's face as he stood there in full police uniform, surrounded by witnesses, realizing that the niece he'd spent 20 years belittling had just been revealed as his superior officer. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To truly understand the sweetness of that victory, you need to know how it all began. 18 years earlier, I was Natasha Williams, a girl who believed family meant something. I'd grown up in the shadow of Uncle Raymond's legendary career in the Riverside Police Department, listening to him hold court at every family gathering about law, order, and discipline. My father, his younger brother, had died when I was 7 in a construction accident, leaving my mother, Pauline, to raise me alone on a seamstress's income in our small duplex on the east side of Riverside Heights. Uncle Raymond never let us forget that he was the successful one in the family. While we struggled to make rent, he'd show up in his cruiser, park it prominently in front of our building so the neighbors could see, and deliver his lectures about making something of yourself and not being a burden on society. My mother would smile tightly and thank him for his concern, her pride preventing her from telling him exactly where he could shove his condescension. "That girl's got no discipline," he'd announce at family dinners, pointing his fork at me like a weapon. "Look at her, nose always in a book. You know what she told me last week? Said she wants to join the military." The military. As if they'd take someone with her attitude. My cousins, Raymond's 3 golden children, Derek Jr., Amanda, and little Tommy, would snicker on cue, well trained in their father's culture of casual cruelty. My mother would place her hand gently on mine under the table, a silent reminder to stay calm, to not give him the satisfaction of a reaction. But inside, I was burning. Burning with determination to prove him wrong. Burning with the knowledge that I was smarter, more disciplined, and more capable than anyone in that dining room gave me credit for. My passion for military service hadn't come from nowhere. My grandfather, Raymond and my father's dad, had been a decorated Marine, serving 2 tours in Vietnam before coming home to raise his family with the kind of quiet dignity that Raymond had somehow failed to inherit. Grandpa Sullivan had died when I was 12, but not before spending countless afternoons teaching me about honor, duty, and the difference between authority and leadership. "Authority is given, Natasha," he'd told me, his weathered hands cleaning his old service rifle with practiced precision. "Leadership is earned. Your uncle has authority in that uniform. But he's never understood the second part. You remember that." I'd absorbed every word like gospel, filling notebooks with research about military academies, service requirements, and career paths. At Riverside Heights High School, I maintained a 3.9 GPA while working 20 hours a week at Marino's Diner to help my mother with bills. My guidance counselor, Mrs. Patricia Hendricks, was the first person outside my mother who actually believed in my potential. "You have something special, Natasha," she'd said during our junior year college planning session. "Have you considered the military academies? With your grades and your background, you'd be a strong candidate." The possibility ignited something fierce inside me. West Point. The Naval Academy. The Air Force Academy. These weren't just schools, they were launch pads to everything I'd dreamed about. I threw myself into preparation, joining JROTC, volunteering for community service, studying for the ACT until I could recite practice questions in my sleep, and training physically until I could outrun, out-push up, and out-sit up most of the boys in my class. Uncle Raymond's reaction when I told the family about my academy applications was predictably dismissive. This was during Christmas dinner at his sprawling 4-bedroom house in Riverside's wealthy Northbrook Hills neighborhood, where he'd moved after his 3rd promotion. Military academies? He'd laughed, actually throwing his head back with theatrical amusement. Natasha, those places are for serious candidates. Athletes. Leaders. Not girls who spend all their time daydreaming. He'd turned to his son, Derek Jr., who was headed to State University on his parents' dime with a 2.8 GPA. Now Derek here, he's got the right idea. State school, criminal justice major, then straight into the academy. The police academy, where real law enforcement happens. My mother's hand had tightened on her fork, but she'd said nothing. We couldn't afford to alienate Raymond completely. He was family, and in our culture, in our community, family was everything, even when they didn't deserve it. That silence cost us both something precious. But it also taught me a valuable lesson about choosing battles and waiting for the right moment to prove yourself. What Uncle Raymond didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd already received my first letter of acceptance. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The acceptance letter from the United States Air Force Academy arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in March, tucked in a thick envelope that my mother held with trembling hands when I got home from my shift at Marino's Diner. I can still remember the weight of that package, the official seal, the way my heart hammered as I tore it open standing right there in our tiny kitchen with its peeling linoleum and the perpetual smell of the lavender sachets my mother made to sell at the weekend market. Congratulations, Ms. Williams. On behalf of the United States Air Force Academy, I am pleased to offer you admission to the class of 2009. I'd screamed. Actually screamed with joy, jumping up and down while my mother cried and held me, both of us dancing in that cramped kitchen like we'd won the lottery. In many ways, we had. Full scholarship. Room and board. A path to everything I'd dreamed about. This wasn't just acceptance, it was validation. Proof that discipline, hard work, and determination could overcome poverty, loss, and the constant drumbeat of low expectations. We have to tell the family, my mother said, wiping her eyes with her apron. Raymond needs to see this. They all need to see what you've accomplished, Mija. I should have known better. I should have recognized the warning signs, the way my uncle's face had darkened every time I'd mentioned my applications, the increasingly pointed comments about knowing your place and realistic expectations. But I was 17 and riding high on achievement, naive enough to believe that even Raymond would have to acknowledge this accomplishment. We hosted a small family gathering that Saturday. Nothing fancy, just sandwiches and my mother's homemade tres leches cake in our duplex living room that barely fit our worn couch and the folding chairs we'd borrowed from the neighbor. My mother had called everyone, Uncle Raymond and Aunt Linda, my cousins, my mother's sister Aunt Camila, and a handful of close family friends who'd watched me grow up. Uncle Raymond arrived late, still in his police uniform from the day's shift, his presence immediately dominating our small space. He'd brought a bottle of cheap sparkling cider, his contribution to celebrations that weren't about him, and positioned himself in the best seat with the practiced ease of someone who expected deference. "So what's this big announcement?" he asked, checking his watch with exaggerated impatience. "We've got Tommy's baseball game at 6. I stood up, the acceptance letter clutched in my slightly sweaty hands, my mother beaming beside me. "I wanted you all to be here because I have some incredible news. I've been accepted to the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. Full scholarship, starting this June." The silence that followed wasn't the congratulatory pause I'd expected. It was cold, stretching out uncomfortably as Uncle Raymond's expression shifted from confusion to something darker, something that looked almost like anger. "The Air Force Academy," he repeated slowly, his voice flat. "You're saying they accepted you?" "Yes." I couldn't contain my excitement despite his tone. "It's one of the most competitive schools in the country. Only about 12% of applicants get in, and this is a joke, right?" He cut me off, looking around the room as if searching for hidden cameras. "Someone put you up to this. Which one of your friends thought this would be funny?" My smile faltered. "Uncle Raymond, it's real. I have the letter right here. Let me see that. He snatched the letter from my hands with enough force that the paper crinkled. His eyes scanned the page, his jaw tightening with each line. Then he did something I'll never forget. He laughed. Not a joyful laugh, but a cruel, mocking sound that cut through our small living room like a blade. This is pathetic, Natasha. Really pathetic. He waved the letter dismissively. You forged an acceptance letter? What, you thought we'd all be so impressed we wouldn't verify it? You thought I wouldn't know people who could check on this? The accusation hit me like a physical blow. What? No. I didn't forge anything. That's official. Don't lie to me. His voice rose to that commanding bark he used on suspects and subordinates, the one designed to intimidate and control. I know your grades aren't that good. I know you have no leadership experience, no athletic achievements worth mentioning. The academies don't take girls like you from neighborhoods like this. They take serious candidates. Raymond, that's enough, my mother interjected, her voice shaking but firm. You will not speak to my daughter that way in our home. He turned on her with barely contained contempt. Pauline, you've always enabled her delusions. This is what happens when you let a girl think she's special just because she reads books and gets decent grades at a mediocre high school. The real world doesn't work that way. Aunt Camilla stood up from her folding chair. The letter looks official to me, Raymond. Maybe you should stay out of this, Camilla. He was fully engaged now, his face reddening. As the only person in this family with actual experience in service and discipline, I think I know what I'm talking about. This letter is either fake, or, he paused, a new theory clearly forming, or it's some diversity initiative. They probably accepted her to fill a quota. Poor minority girl from the wrong side of town. Makes for good optics. The words landed like grenades, each one designed for maximum damage. Around the room, faces showed varying degrees of shock and discomfort. My cousin Amanda looked down at her hands. Derek Jr. smirked. My mother's friend, Mrs. Rosales, started to object but fell silent when Raymond shot her a warning glare. Even if it is real, he continued, standing now, using his full height and authority, you'll never make it through. You know what the washout rate is at those places? First year alone, they lose 30%. And that's the qualified candidates. You'll be home by Christmas, another statistic, another failure wasting government resources. That's not true, I managed, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. I've prepared for this. I've been training. Training? He scoffed. You work at a diner and take easy classes. You have no idea what real discipline looks like. My son Derek is studying criminal justice, maintaining his physicals, preparing the right way for a real career in law enforcement. That's the path for people from families like ours. Not this fantasy about becoming some kind of officer. He tossed the letter back at me, it fluttered to the floor between us like a wounded bird. I'm saying this because I'm the only one here who cares enough to tell you the truth. You're going to embarrass yourself and this entire family. When you fail out, and you will fail out, don't come crying to me about how unfair it was or how hard they were on you. You're making a mistake, and I won't be party to celebrating it. With that, he gestured to his family. Linda, kids, we're leaving. We have that baseball game. Aunt Linda gathered her purse with apologetic eyes but said nothing. My cousins filed out, Tommy looking confused, Amanda embarrassed, Derek Jr. still wearing that insufferable smirk. As Uncle Raymond reached the door, he turned back one final time. One more thing, Natasha. When this fantasy collapses, remember that I warned you. Remember that I tried to save you from your own delusions. Maybe then you'll finally learn what the rest of us already know. There are people who lead, and people who follow. You're a follower. Always have been, always will be. The door closed behind them with a finality that echoed through our stunned living room. I stood there, the acceptance letter crumpled on the floor at my feet, my mother's hand on my shoulder, and felt something shift inside me. The hurt was there, raw and immediate, but beneath it, something harder was forming. Not just determination, but a cold, focused resolve that would carry me through everything that followed. My mother knelt and picked up the letter, smoothing it carefully. "He's wrong, Mija. About all of it. You're going to prove him wrong." As the remaining guests offered quiet congratulations and filtered out into the evening, I made myself a promise: I would not just attend the academy. I would excel. I would rise. And someday, somehow, Uncle Raymond would understand exactly how wrong he'd been. I just didn't know yet how spectacularly that confrontation would eventually unfold. The Sunday after Uncle Raymond's devastating performance in our living room, I woke up before dawn with tear-stained cheeks and a decision crystallizing in my mind. I'd spent Saturday in a fog of humiliation, replaying every cruel word, every mocking laugh, every face in that room that had either agreed with him or stayed silent. The acceptance letter sat on my nightstand, slightly wrinkled from where my mother had tried to smooth it out, a testament to both my achievement and my uncle's cruelty. But Sunday morning felt different. The pre-dawn darkness outside my window wasn't oppressive, it was cleansing. I lay there listening to the sounds of our neighborhood waking up, Mrs. Chen's rooster 3 houses down, the early bus rumbling past on Fletcher Street, my mother's soft footsteps in the kitchen as she started her morning routine before heading to her sewing work. I got up, pulled on my running shoes, and stepped out into the cool April air. I didn't have a plan, just a need to move, to do something physical with the churning energy inside me. I ran our neighborhood loop, past Marino's Diner where I'd work my shift later, past Riverside Heights High School where I'd walked the stage in 2 months, past the turnoff that led to Uncle Raymond's pristine neighborhood where people didn't have to choose between electricity and groceries. 5 miles later, I stood sweating on the cracked basketball court at Riverside Park, the same court where my father used to play pickup games before the accident. This was where Grandpa Sullivan had first told me about his service, sitting on these same weathered bleachers, watching the sunrise paint the sky orange and gold. "When someone tells you what you can't do, Natasha," I could almost hear his voice in the morning air, "you have 2 choices. You can believe them and prove them right, or you can use their doubt as fuel. The second path is harder. Much harder. But it's the only one worth taking." I pulled out my phone, a cracked screen hand-me-down that barely held a charge, and composed a text to Mrs. Hendricks, my guidance counselor. It was 6:47 a.m. on a Sunday, completely inappropriate to contact a teacher, but I didn't care. "Mrs. H, is your offer to help me prepare for the academy still open? I need to be ready for everything they're going to throw at me. Natasha." Her response came faster than I expected. "Absolutely. My husband is retired Air Force. We'll create a training plan. Come by Monday after school." "And Natasha? I heard what happened at your family gathering. Don't you dare let anyone dim your light." That simple message, from someone who barely knew me but believed in me more than my own family, broke something open inside me. I sat down on those bleachers and cried, not from sadness this time, but from a mixture of gratitude, determination, and the overwhelming weight of knowing that the next 4 years would define the rest of my life. When I got home, my mother was at the kitchen table with her coffee and her sewing supplies spread out for the day's work. She looked up as I entered, her eyes assessing my emotional state with the precision only mothers possess. "You went running," she observed. I needed to think. I poured myself water from the tap, drinking it down in long gulps. "Mommy, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." She set down the blouse she was hemming. "Siempre, Mija. Always. Do you think Uncle Raymond is right? Even a little bit?" The question hurt to ask, but I needed to hear her answer. "Do you think I'm going to fail?" My mother stood up and crossed to where I stood by the sink. She took my face in both her hands, those hands that had worked so hard for so many years, calloused from needles and thread and sacrifice. "Listen to me carefully, Natasha Maria Williams. Your uncle is a small man with a big uniform. He mistakes authority for achievement, and he cannot stand seeing someone rise above the station he's assigned them in his mind. Especially not a woman. Especially not the daughter of the brother who he always secretly envied. He envied Papa. This was news to me. Your father was smarter, kinder, more loved. Raymond spent their whole childhood competing with a ghost of his own making. When your father died, Raymond thought he'd finally won something. But then you came along, with your father's intelligence and your grandfather's honor, and it reminded him all over again of what he lacks. She smiled sadly. You threaten his entire worldview just by existing, Mija. That's why he needs you to fail. Not because he believes you will, but because he needs you to. The insight hit me with unexpected force. Uncle Raymond's cruelty wasn't really about me at all, it was about his own insecurities, his own limitations, his own fear of being shown up by a 17-year-old girl from the wrong part of town. I'm going to prove him wrong, Mommy. Not for him. For me. For you. For Papa and Grandpa Sullivan. I know you will. She kissed my forehead. Now eat something. You can't train on an empty stomach. Monday after school, I met with Mrs. Hendricks and her husband, Colonel James Hendricks, USAF retired. Their home was modest but comfortable, walls covered with military memorabilia and family photos documenting a life of service. Colonel Hendricks was a tall black man with gray threading through his close-cropped hair, carrying himself with the kind of quiet dignity that reminded me achingly of my grandfather. So you're the young lady who's got the whole town talking, he said with a slight smile as he gestured for me to sit at their dining room table, which was already covered with training manuals, workout schedules, and academy preparation materials. Sir, I just want to be ready. My uncle says I'm going to wash out, and I need to make sure that never happens. Colonel Hendricks exchanged a glance with his wife, then leaned forward. Let me tell you something about the academy, Natasha. The physical challenges? Those are designed to be hard but manageable for anyone who puts in the work. The academic challenges? Difficult, but you've proven you can handle rigorous coursework. You know what actually breaks people? I shook my head. Doubt. Self-doubt specifically. The academy isn't trying to defeat you, it's trying to forge you. But if you arrive already believing you don't belong, already questioning whether you deserve to be there, already listening to voices that tell you you're not good enough, that's when the system wins. He tapped the table for emphasis. Your biggest enemy isn't going to be the upperclassmen, the coursework, or the physical training. It's going to be the voice in your head that sounds like your uncle. So how do I fight that? Mrs. Hendricks slid a 3-ring binder across the table. With preparation. With proof. With so much competence that doubt has nowhere to hide. My husband and I are going to help you arrive at the academy as one of the most prepared doolies, that's what they call freshmen, in your class. Starting tomorrow, you train. The training program they designed was brutal. Every morning at 5 a.m., I met Colonel Hendricks at the high school track for PT, push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups, running drills, and more running. He taught me proper form for everything, corrected my breathing, and pushed me past the point where I thought I couldn't continue. The academy will test your body, he'd say as I struggled through my 5th set of push-ups, arms shaking. But more importantly, they're testing your mind. Can you push past discomfort? Can you find strength when your body says quit? That's what they want to know. After school, Mrs. Hendricks tutored me in military history, protocol, and the specific academic challenges I'd face. She drilled me on Air Force ranks, chain of command, famous battles, and the honor code I'd be expected to live by: we will not lie, steal, or cheat, nor tolerate among us anyone who does. This isn't just words, Natasha, she emphasized. This becomes who you are. The academy builds officers of character. That means when your uncle says you forged that acceptance letter, you don't sink to his level. You prove him wrong through action, not argument. Evenings after my diner shifts, I studied. I devoured books on military leadership, watched documentaries about the academy, and connected with current cadets through online forums who gave me the unvarnished truth about what I was facing. One cadet, a 3rd year named Jasmine Rodriguez, became a regular email correspondent. The first 6 weeks are called BEAST, Basic Cadet Training, she wrote. It's designed to break down your civilian habits and rebuild you as a military professional. They'll yell, push, and test every limit you have. But here's the secret: everyone is struggling. The people who make it aren't necessarily the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones who refuse to quit when quitting would be easier. They're the ones who remember why they're there. Why was I there? That became my meditation during the hardest training moments. Not to prove Uncle Raymond wrong, that was too small a motivation to sustain me through 4 years of difficulty. I was there because my grandfather had shown me that service was about something bigger than yourself. Because my father had worked himself to death trying to build something better for his family. Because my mother had sacrificed everything to give me opportunities she'd never had. I was there because little girls in neighborhoods like mine needed to see that the path from poverty to leadership wasn't closed, that service and honor weren't reserved for people from better families or right backgrounds. I was there because I wanted to be part of something that mattered, that demanded excellence and gave meaning in return. As graduation approached and my departure for Colorado Springs loomed closer, word spread through our community about Uncle Raymond's public dismissal of my achievement. The responses varied. Some people, I'm sure, agreed with him, thought I was reaching above my station, destined to fail and embarrass the family. But others surprised me. Mr. Moreno, my boss at the diner, pulled me aside during a Saturday morning rush. My son served in the Marines, he said quietly, sliding an envelope across the counter. He wanted to give you this for your journey. Inside was $300, an enormous sum for a family that ran a struggling diner. You show them what Riverside Heights can produce, Mija. Make us all proud. Mrs. Rosales, who'd been at that disastrous family gathering, stopped by our duplex with a box of supplies, shower shoes, toiletries, and a framed photo of my grandfather in his marine dress blues that I didn't even know she had. I took this at your 10th birthday party, she explained. He told me that day that you'd go further than any Williams before you. He knew, Natasha. He always knew. Even some of my classmates who'd barely spoken to me began offering encouragement. The captain of the football team, Marcus Chin, approached me in the hallway between classes. My dad's army, he said. He says the academies are no joke. Respect for even trying. But from Uncle Raymond? Silence. Complete, absolute silence. No apology, no acknowledgement, no attempt to walk back his cruel dismissal. At my high school graduation in late May, where I graduated third in my class and received the Principal's Award for Leadership, the Williams family section was noticeably absent of Raymond, Linda, and my cousins. My mother sat alone in our section, her pride visible from the stage, but the empty seats beside her spoke volumes. After the ceremony, as I stood in my blue graduation gown accepting congratulations, I spotted Uncle Raymond's police cruiser driving slowly past the school parking lot. He slowed as he passed, his face visible through the window, watching the celebration he'd refused to be part of. Then he accelerated and disappeared down Riverside Boulevard. Let him go, my mother said softly, appearing at my elbow. You have bigger things ahead. 3 weeks later, on June 28th, my mother drove me to the airport in our wheezing 15-year-old Honda Civic. My single duffel bag, packed according to the Academy's strict guidelines, sat in the back seat. Everything I owned that mattered fit in that bag, a reality that was both liberating and terrifying. At the departure's curb, my mother held me tight, whispering prayers in Spanish and English, her tears soaking into my shirt. Remember who you are, Mija. Remember where you come from. And remember that you carry all of us with you, your father, your grandfather, everyone who believed in you. I won't let you down, Mommy. I promise. You could never let me down, Natasha. You already made me the proudest mother in the world. As the plane lifted off from Riverside Regional Airport, I pressed my face to the window, watching my hometown shrink beneath me. Somewhere down there, Uncle Raymond was probably starting his evening shift, completely unaware that the niece he'd dismissed was about to step into a crucible that would forge her into someone he couldn't even imagine. The doubt was still there, whispering in the back of my mind with my uncle's voice. But louder now was Colonel Hendricks's counsel, my mother's faith, and my own hard-won determination. I was ready. Or at least, I was as ready as anyone could be for what came next. The Academy's in-processing day, I-Day, arrived with the kind of crystalline Colorado sunshine that seemed designed to mock the chaos about to unfold. I stepped off the bus at the base of the iconic Bring Me Men ramp with 49 other terrified basic cadets, our civilian clothes marking us as outsiders in a world that was about to systematically dismantle everything we thought we knew about ourselves. Move. 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 The upperclassmen, cadre, descended on us like a coordinated storm, their voices creating a wall of sound designed to disorient and overwhelm. You have 60 seconds to get up this ramp. If you're not standing on those footprints at the top, you've already failed. The next 6 hours blurred into a fever dream of shouting, confusion, and constant motion. Haircuts that reduced us all to near-identical buzz cuts. Uniform issue where everything had to be perfect immediately despite never having worn military dress before. Medical processing. Paperwork. More shouting. Always more shouting. Basic Cadet Williams. A cadre member, a lean woman with a first-class insignia and eyes that missed nothing, appeared in my face as I struggled with my first uniform issue. Is that how we wear a cover in the United States Air Force? No, ma'am. I'd practiced this. Colonel Hendricks had drilled me on proper responses, posture, everything. Fix it. You have 5 seconds. My hands shook as I adjusted the combination cap, muscle memory from weeks of practice with Colonel Hendricks fighting against pure adrenaline. 4 seconds. It clicked into place. Better. Don't let me catch that again. She moved on to the next victim, and I exhaled shakily. Beast, basic cadet training, was everything Jasmine Rodriguez had warned me about and worse. We woke at 0445 for PT that left us gasping and shaking. We marched until our feet blistered through our new boots. We memorized knowledge, quotes from military leaders, Air Force history, aircraft specifications, that we'd be tested on randomly throughout the day. We learned to eat square meals, eyes fixed on the wall while upperclassmen circled like sharks, looking for any deviation from perfection. Basic Cadet Williams, recite contrails. I snapped to attention, fork frozen halfway to my mouth in the prescribed right angle. We have not touched the ground in over 2 months, ma'am. Our element is the air, and it defines our character. Time on knowledge? My mind raced. We'd been tested on this yesterday. 23 days until the acceptance parade, ma'am. Wrong. 22 days. Drop and give me 20. I hit the ground immediately, my tray abandoned, and counted out push-ups while the rest of my squadron continued their mechanical eating. This was life now. Perfection was expected. Anything less meant punishment, but punishment was never personal, it was teaching. Every correction, every drop for push-ups, every late-night knowledge session was building something. The physical challenges were brutal but manageable. Colonel Hendricks had prepared me well. Where other basics struggled with the morning runs, I found myself in the front pack. Where some failed the fitness assessments, I exceeded standards. My body was holding up. But the mental warfare was something else entirely. 3 weeks into Beast, during a particularly grueling knowledge session at 2,100 hours when we were all running on 4 hours of sleep over 2 days, I hit my first wall. We stood at attention in our dorm hallway, called the Hellway for good reason, while cadre members rotated through, asking rapid-fire questions about everything from chain of command to aircraft specifications to proper uniform wear. Basic Cadet Williams. The voice came from my left. What is your class motto? My mind went completely blank. We'd memorized this on day 2. I'd recited it perfectly a dozen times. But standing there, exhausted beyond reason, with the stress and pressure of 6 weeks compounding, I couldn't pull it from my memory. Ma'am, I don't know. The cadre member, Cadet Captain Morrison, stepped closer. You don't know? That's interesting. Because every other basic in your squadron knows. Are you special, Williams? Do the standards not apply to you? And there it was. Uncle Raymond's voice superimposed over hers. You're not special. You'll never make it. You're wasting everyone's time. No, ma'am. Then why don't you know your class motto? No excuse, ma'am. That's right. No excuse. Drop and give me 30. Then report to my office at 2200. We're going to have a conversation about your commitment to this institution. I dropped and counted out push-ups while my classmates remained at attention, unable to help, unable to intervene. This was the system: individual accountability, public consequences, constant pressure to perform. At 2200, I reported to Cadet Captain Morrison's room, standing rigidly at attention in her doorway. She sat at her desk, still in uniform, reviewing paperwork. Enter. Close the door. Stand at ease. I did as ordered, hands clasped behind my back, eyes forward. She studied me for a long moment. I pulled your file before this meeting, Basic Cadet Williams. You know what I found? No, ma'am. Exemplary academic record. Strong fitness scores. Decent leadership potential. But there's something off. You're performing adequately, but you're holding back. Why? The question caught me off guard. Ma'am, I don't understand. Yes, you do. I've been doing this for 3 years. I can spot a basic who's running scared from something. So I'm asking you directly, what are you afraid of? The honest answer would have been everything. Failing. Proving Uncle Raymond right. Disappointing my mother. Wasting this opportunity. But that wasn't what she wanted to hear. Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Granted. I took a breath. Ma'am, before I arrived here, someone close to my family told me I'd wash out by Christmas. That I didn't belong here. That people like me don't make it through places like this. And every time something goes wrong, every time I forget knowledge or mess up, I hear that voice telling me he was right. Morrison leaned back in her chair. Let me tell you a story, Williams. I'm from a trailer park in rural Kentucky. First person in my family to graduate high school, let alone attend college. When I got accepted here, my own father told me I was getting above my station. Said the military was for real Americans, not poor white trash from nowhere towns. You know what I did? No, ma'am. I used it. Every time training got hard, every time I wanted to quit, I pictured his face. And I pushed harder. Not because I needed his approval, I'll never get that, but because I needed to prove to myself that his limited vision didn't define my possibilities. She stood up. The academy doesn't care where you came from, Williams. It cares where you're going. But you can't get there if you're constantly looking backward at someone else's doubts. Use it or lose it. Choose. That conversation became a turning point. I started approaching every challenge differently, not as a test I might fail, but as proof I was exactly where I belonged. When knowledge sessions got brutal, I studied harder. When PT pushed my limits, I pushed back. When my flight, the small unit I was assigned to, struggled with a team challenge, I stepped up as element leader despite the risk of being noticed, criticized, corrected. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It happened in small moments, accumulated over weeks of relentless pressure. During the assault course when I helped a struggling classmate over the wall despite being exhausted myself. During academics when I started a study group that met during our precious free time. During drill practice when I finally stopped thinking about every movement and just trusted my training. My roommate, a girl named Kennedy Blackwell from Atlanta with a photographic memory and a wicked sense of humor, became my anchor during the worst moments. We'd lie in our bunks during the few minutes before lights out, whispering about home, family, and why we were putting ourselves through this voluntary torture. My mom's a single parent too, Kennedy told me one night after a particularly crushing day. She cleaned houses to put me through private school. Every time I want to quit, I think about her on her knees scrubbing someone else's toilet so I could have opportunities she never did. That's what gets me out of bed at 0445. My uncle told my whole family I forged my acceptance letter, I shared. Said I'd wash out, embarrass everyone. Part of me is terrified he's right. Then prove him wrong, Kennedy said simply. Not for him. For you. For your mom. For every little girl in your neighborhood who needs to see that this path exists. The acceptance parade, the culmination of Beast, arrived in late August. We'd survived. Not everyone had, several basics had quit or been separated for various reasons, but our squadron stood in perfect formation, now wearing the same uniform as the upperclassmen, no longer doolies but fourth-class cadets. The lowest rank in the wing, but cadets nonetheless. As the superintendent administered the oath, my hand raised in salute, I felt something shift inside me. The scared girl who'd arrived in June was gone. In her place stood someone harder, more confident, more capable. Someone who'd been tested and hadn't broken. I, Natasha Williams, having been appointed a cadet in the United States Air Force, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. My mother had flown out for the ceremony, her first time on an airplane, her first time leaving Texas, a trip she could barely afford but insisted on making. I found her afterward in the crowd of families, tears streaming down her face. Papa would be so proud, she whispered, holding me tight despite the strict rules about public displays of affection. Grandpa Sullivan would be so proud. I am so proud. I made it through Beast, Mommy. But this is just the beginning. I know, Mija. But you made it further than he said you would. You're already proving him wrong. The academic year that followed was its own special kind of hell. 21 credit hours per semester of engineering, military studies, humanities, and sciences. Daily military training. Mandatory athletics. Leadership roles within the squadron. Sleep became a luxury measured in minutes rather than hours. I survived on caffeine, determination, and the study group Kennedy and I had formed with 3 other fourth-class cadets. We gathered in the library during evening study hours, drilling each other on thermodynamics, military history, and calculus. We practiced inspections in the hallways, correcting each other's uniforms and knowledge. We ran extra miles together when one of us was struggling with fitness standards. We became a unit, bonded by shared suffering and common purpose. The holidays arrived, bringing a 2-week break that most cadets used to return home. I couldn't afford the flight, so I stayed on base with the handful of others who remained. Christmas Day found me in the nearly empty dorm, video calling my mother on the ancient laptop I'd bought used. "Have you heard from Uncle Raymond?" she asked carefully, knowing it was a sensitive topic. "No, Mommy. And I don't expect to." He made his position clear. "His loss, Mija. You're becoming someone remarkable." What my mother didn't know, what I couldn't tell her without sounding petty, was that I'd started tracking my progress obsessively. Not just grades and fitness scores, but leadership positions, recognition, advancement. I kept a journal documenting every achievement, every challenge overcome, every moment I proved I belonged. It wasn't healthy, probably. This scorekeeping mentality, this constant need to accumulate proof of worth. But it gave me something to focus on during the darkest moments when doubt crept back in, when exhaustion made everything seem impossible, when I questioned whether any of this was worth the sacrifice. Second semester brought new challenges. I was selected as an element leader, responsible for a small group of fourth-class cadets during military training. It meant more responsibility, more scrutiny, more opportunities to fail publicly. But it also meant I was being recognized as someone with leadership potential, someone worth investing in. During spring training exercises, my element was tasked with navigating a complex leadership reaction course, a timed challenge requiring problem-solving, teamwork, and adaptability. We had 20 minutes to get our entire team and specific equipment over a simulated obstacle without touching certain areas or using prohibited methods. "Williams, what's your plan?" The evaluating upperclassman stood with his clipboard, timing us. I surveyed the course, my team looking to me for direction. This was it, a moment where leadership mattered, where my decisions would directly impact our success or failure. For just a second, I heard Uncle Raymond's voice, "You're a follower. Always have been, always will be." Then Kennedy's voice, stronger, "Prove him wrong." "All right, listen up," I called to my element. "Chen, you're our tallest, you're going to anchor this position. Rodriguez, you've got the best balance, you'll be our bridge. Everyone else, we're building a human chain. Execute on my count. We completed the course in 16 minutes, one of the fastest times of the day. The evaluating upperclassman nodded approval. Solid leadership, Williams. Decisive, clear, effective. That's the kind of thinking we need from future officers. That night, I added it to my journal. Another small victory. Another piece of proof. By the end of my 4th class year, I'd achieved more than I'd dared hope. Dean's List both semesters. Warrior Flight Award for our squadron's military training excellence. Recognition as a distinguished performer in leadership laboratories. I'd not only survived, I was thriving. As summer approached and we prepared for the transition to 3 degrees, 3rd class cadets, I received an unexpected email from Jasmine Rodriguez, the cadet who'd mentored me through my first year via correspondence. Congratulations on making it through, Natasha. I knew you would. Now comes the real work, building on this foundation. The academy doesn't just create officers. It creates leaders of character. Keep pushing. Keep growing. And keep proving wrong everyone who doubted you. I printed that email and taped it inside my desk drawer, next to a photo of my mother and grandfather. Small talismans reminding me why I was here, what I was building, and who I was becoming. Uncle Raymond's voice still whispered sometimes in moments of doubt. But it was growing fainter, drowned out by the chorus of my own achievements, my own proof, my own undeniable presence in a place he'd insisted I'd never reach. The girl who'd arrived in June, terrified and uncertain, was gone. In her place stood a cadet who knew exactly what she was capable of, and was hungry for more. My 3-degree year began with recognition, a grueling 3-day trial where upperclassmen put us through physical and mental challenges designed to break us down before building us back up as accepted members of the cadet wing. Those who made it through earned the right to be called by their first names, to walk freely around campus without rigid military bearing, to be treated as colleagues rather than subordinates by the upperclassmen. I made it through, bloody-kneed and exhausted, but standing. The moment when Cadet Captain Morrison, now my squadron's operations officer, shook my hand and said, "Welcome to the wing, Natasha," felt like crossing an invisible threshold into legitimacy. I belonged here. Not conditionally, not provisionally, but absolutely. But the real turning point came 6 weeks into fall semester during a routine military briefing. Our air officer commanding, the active duty Air Force officer assigned to oversee our squadron, announced an opportunity that made my heart race. The Academy is looking for cadets to participate in an exchange program with operational Air Force units over winter break, Major Patricia Vance explained, her sharp eyes scanning our assembled squadron. Selected cadets will embed with active duty squadrons, observe real-world operations, and gain perspective on what you're training toward. Competition is fierce. Applications are due Friday. Kennedy nudged me as we filed out of the briefing room. "You're applying, right? This is exactly the kind of thing that looks incredible on your record." "I don't know if I'm competitive enough," I hedged, my default response to opportunity still tinged with doubt. 3 degrees don't usually get selected for these programs. "Stop it." Kennedy planted herself in front of me, blocking my path. "That thinking right there? That's the old Natasha talking. The new Natasha, the one who led our element to top scores, made Dean's List twice, and got recognized as distinguished performer, she applies for everything and lets them tell her no. She doesn't preemptively reject herself. She was right. I'd made it this far by pushing past comfort zones, by refusing to let other people's limitations define my possibilities. Why was I still holding myself back? I submitted my application on Wednesday, 2 days before the deadline. It included my academic record, fitness scores, leadership evaluations, and a personal statement about why I wanted to participate. I poured everything into that statement, my desire to understand the operational Air Force, my commitment to becoming an officer who leads with both competence and character, my drive to prove that cadets from unconventional backgrounds bring valuable perspectives to the service. The notification came 3 weeks later via email. "Congratulations, Cadet Williams. You have been selected for the winter exchange program. You will be assigned to the 437th Airlift Wing at Joint Base Charleston, South Carolina. Report date, December 27th. I read the email 4 times before it truly registered. Selected. Me. Out of hundreds of applicants across all 4 classes, I'd been chosen. This wasn't just an achievement, it was validation from the operational Air Force that I was worth investing in, worth developing, worth their time. You did it. Kennedy shrieked when I told her, drawing annoyed looks from others studying in the library. Charleston. That's C-17s, right? Heavy airlift? Oh my God, Natasha, this is huge. It was huge. And terrifying. I'd be the only cadet in a squadron of seasoned active-duty airmen, many of whom had deployed multiple times, who'd seen combat, who'd lived the life I was still only training for. The imposter syndrome that I'd worked so hard to suppress came roaring back. What if I embarrassed myself? What if they realized I wasn't as competent as my record suggested? What if Uncle Raymond's prediction, that I'd fail when faced with real military standards, finally came true? Major Vance must have sensed my spiraling anxiety when I reported to her office for the pre-departure briefing. She gestured to the chair across from her desk, her expression unreadable. You look terrified, Williams. Why? Ma'am, I'm concerned about representing the Academy properly. These are operational airmen with real-world experience, and I'm just a... You're just a what? A cadet who's earned every opportunity she's received. A 3-degree who's outperforming most first ties in military training? Major Vance leaned forward. Listen carefully. The 437th requested you specifically. They reviewed all the applications and asked for you by name. Colonel Sarah Winters, the wing commander, saw your background, first-generation college student, enlisted family history, top 20% of your class, and said, that's the kind of officer we need to develop. You were chosen on merit. Remember that when the doubt creeps in. The words settled over me like armor. Chosen on merit. Not diversity quota. Not lucky break. Merit. I flew into Charleston on a commercial flight 2 days after Christmas, my mother's carefully packed tamales in my carry-on despite my protests that I wouldn't have access to proper reheating facilities. The base was quieter than I'd expected, many personnel on holiday leave, but the operational tempo was still evident in the activity around the flight line where massive C-17 Glowmaster III aircraft sat like sleeping giants. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Drake, the squadron commander for the 16th Airlift Squadron, met me at base operations. He was a stocky man in his early 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor and calluses on his hands that suggested he still got personally involved in aircraft operations. Cadet Williams. Welcome to Charleston. Did you bring your appetite for hard work? Yes, sir. Ready to learn everything you're willing to teach me? Good answer. Here's how this works, you're not a tourist. You're embedded with us. That means you participate in morning briefs, observe flight operations, assist with mission planning, and generally make yourself useful. Questions? No, sir. Thank you for this opportunity. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you've pulled a 12-hour shift in mission planning during a cargo surge. But he smiled slightly, suggesting the gruffness was partly performance. The 2 weeks I spent at Charleston transformed my understanding of what I was training toward. I sat in on mission briefs where crews planned humanitarian airlift operations to disaster zones. I watched maintenance teams work through the night to keep aircraft mission ready. I stood on the flight line as a C-17 roared into the sky, carrying supplies that would save lives halfway around the world. Most impactfully, I met Captain Jasmine Torres, a pilot in her late 20s who took me under her wing, literally, giving me a tour of her C-17 that included the flight deck, cargo bay, and every system that kept the massive aircraft operational. You know what the difference is between a good officer and a great one? She asked as we stood in the cargo bay of her aircraft, the smell of hydraulic fluid and jet fuel sharp in the cold air. Great officers remember that leadership is a privilege, not a right. Every airman you'll eventually command is someone's son or daughter. They're trusting you with their career, their well-being, sometimes their lives. You honor that trust by being competent, by being fair, and by never asking them to do something you wouldn't do yourself. I absorbed every word, every observation, every lesson. This wasn't theoretical leadership taught in a classroom, this was the lived reality of military service. The weight of responsibility, the satisfaction of mission accomplishment, the bonds formed through shared purpose. On my last day, Colonel Winters summoned me to her office. I reported with crisp military bearing, uncertain why the wing commander wanted to see me personally. At ease, Cadet Williams. Sit. She gestured to a chair. I wanted to meet you before you left. Your squadron commander sent glowing reports about your performance these past 2 weeks. Professional, eager to learn, respectful of the enlisted corps. That last part is particularly important. Ma'am, my grandfather was enlisted. I understand that officers lead, but enlisted airmen are the backbone of everything we accomplish. Exactly right. Too many academy grads forget that. She pulled a folder from her desk drawer. I'm writing you a letter of recommendation to keep in your file. When you commission in 2 years, if you want to come to Charleston, to my wing, I'll make it happen. We need more officers with your attitude. The letter went into my carefully maintained collection of achievements, tangible proof that I was building something real, something that would outlast doubt and skepticism. When I returned to the academy in January for spring semester, I carried myself differently. More confidently. More certain of my place and my purpose. That confidence translated into new opportunities. I was selected as an instructor for basic cadets during their summer training, a position typically reserved for first highs but offered to exceptional 3 degrees who demonstrated leadership capacity. I was chosen to represent the academy at a regional leadership conference. My academic performance remained strong, and I added a minor in Arabic to my astronautical engineering major, preparing for potential deployment opportunities. But the achievement that would prove most significant came near the end of my 3-degree year during spring commissioning season. The academy hosted a ceremony where second lieutenants who'd graduated the previous year and completed their initial training returned to receive their first permanent assignments. Among them was Lieutenant Jasmine Rodriguez, my early email mentor who'd guided me through BEAST. She'd been assigned to intelligence work at Ramstein Air Base in Germany, and she sought me out after the ceremony. Natasha Williams. Look at you, 3-degree already, instructor select, Arabic minor. You've been busy. Following your advice, I said, genuinely happy to see her. Push through, prove them wrong, remember why I'm here. Speaking of which, have you been back home since you started? The question caught me off guard. I hadn't. Couldn't afford it, honestly. My mother visited once during my 3-degree year, but I hadn't set foot in Riverside Heights since I'd left for I-Day nearly 2 years earlier. No. It's expensive, and the breaks are short. It's also avoidance, Jasmine said gently. At some point, you're going to have to go back. Not for them, but for you. To close that chapter properly. To show yourself how much you've changed. The observation landed with uncomfortable accuracy. I was avoiding Riverside Heights, avoiding the possibility of running into Uncle Raymond, avoiding the confirmation of whether he still believed I'd fail, whether he'd acknowledged my success, whether his opinion still had power over me. I don't know if I'm ready, I admitted. You made it through recognition. You survived BEAST. You earned a slot at an operational base. You're instructing basics this summer. Jasmine squeezed my shoulder. You're ready. The question is whether you're willing. That conversation planted a seed that grew throughout the remainder of spring semester. My mother called weekly, filling me in on neighborhood news, carefully avoiding any mention of Uncle Raymond unless I brought him up. Which I never did. Until one Sunday in early April when she casually mentioned, your cousin Derek graduated from the police academy last week. Raymond's very proud. Says Derek's following in his footsteps properly, unlike some people who chase impossible dreams. The barb, delivered secondhand, still stung. Unlike some people. Meaning me. Still dismissive. Still convinced I was on a path to failure despite 2 years of evidence to the contrary. That's nice for Derek, I managed, keeping my voice neutral. I'm happy for him. Mija, you don't have to pretend his words don't hurt. But you also don't have to let them matter. You're building something he can't even comprehend. His opinion is irrelevant. Was it though? If it was truly irrelevant, why did it still have the power to wound? Why was I still, after all this time and achievement, measuring myself against his expectations? Kennedy found me that evening in our dorm room, staring at my academic awards and fitness certificates arranged on the wall, my shrine of proof, my collection of merit. What's wrong? She asked, reading my mood instantly. My uncle still thinks I'm going to fail. 2 years in, top quarter of our class, instructor select, exchange program completion, and he still thinks I'm chasing impossible dreams. Kennedy sat down beside me. So prove him wrong. I have been proving him wrong. For 2 years. How much more proof do I need? Not for him, she said quietly. For you. When are you going to believe your own proof, Natasha? When are you going to stop needing his validation and start trusting your own achievements? The question echoed in my mind for weeks. When would it be enough? When would I finally shed the weight of his doubt and stand fully in my own accomplishment? The answer began to crystallize as I prepared for my summer assignment as a basic training instructor. I'd be in the position that had once terrified me, the upperclassman with authority, responsibility for shaping new cadets, and the power to impact their academy experience for better or worse. Training for the role was intensive. The academy wanted instructors who could be firm but fair, demanding but developmental. We learned techniques for building resilience in basics without breaking their spirit, for correcting mistakes without destroying confidence, for pushing physical limits while maintaining safety. Remember, our training officer emphasized, you're not trying to make them quit. You're trying to help them discover strength they didn't know they possessed. There's a crucial difference between hazing and training. One tears down for cruelty's sake. The other builds up through challenge. I thought of Cadet Captain Morrison, who'd confronted my fear and helped me reframe it. I thought of Colonel Hendricks, who'd prepared me physically and mentally for everything the academy would throw at me. I thought of every upperclassman who'd corrected me with purpose rather than malice, who'd seen potential worth developing rather than weakness worth exploiting. That's the kind of instructor I wanted to be. Not the mirror of Uncle Raymond's dismissive cruelty, but the embodiment of everyone who'd believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. When the basics arrived in late June for I-Day, I was ready. Standing at the top of that ramp in my upperclassman uniform, watching terrified 18-year-olds stumble off buses into controlled chaos, I saw myself 2 years earlier, scared, uncertain, carrying invisible weight from people who doubted my worth. My flight, the small group of basics I'd be personally responsible for, assembled before me with wide eyes and trembling hands. 12 young people from across the country, each with their own story, their own doubts, their own Uncle Raymonds whispering that they didn't belong. Listen carefully, I told them, my voice firm but not cruel. The next 6 weeks will be the hardest thing you've ever experienced. You will be exhausted. You will question why you came. You will want to quit. But here's what I need you to understand, you were selected because someone saw potential in you. Your job now is to prove them right. Not by being perfect, by refusing to quit when perfection is impossible. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am, they shouted in unison, voices cracking with stress and determination. As I led them into their first day of military training, I felt something shift inside me. A sense of purpose beyond personal achievement. These basics didn't need my doubt or my insecurity. They needed my strength, my knowledge, my proof that the path from terrified basic to confident cadet was real and navigable. Uncle Raymond's voice still whispered sometimes in quiet moments. But standing there as an instructor, responsible for shaping the next generation of officers, I realized something profound. His opinion had stopped mattering the moment I'd stepped off that bus 2 years ago. I just hadn't recognized it yet. The proof I'd been collecting wasn't for him. It was for every version of myself that had doubted, questioned, and feared. And there was finally enough proof to silence every last whisper of uncertainty. I wasn't just surviving the academy anymore. I was thriving. Leading. Becoming exactly who Grandpa Sullivan had always known I could be. My first high year, senior year, arrived with the weight of leadership and the proximity of commissioning making everything feel simultaneously urgent and surreal. I'd been selected as a squadron commander, one of the highest leadership positions available to cadets, responsible for over 100 cadets' military training, discipline, and development. The position came with its own office, direct access to our air officer commanding, and visibility that was both opportunity and exposure. Cadet Major Williams, Major Vance said during my first official briefing in the new role, using my cadet rank for the first time. You understand what this position represents? You're not just managing schedules and inspections. You're setting the climate for an entire squadron. Your leadership philosophy will ripple through every flight, every element, every individual cadet. What kind of commander are you going to be? I'd thought about this question extensively during the summer between my 3-degree and 2-degree years, and again during my preparation for this role. What kind of leader did I want to be? Ma'am, I want to be the kind of commander who builds people up rather than tears them down. Who holds high standards without using fear as a motivation tool. Who remembers that every cadet has their own story, their own struggles, and deserves to be developed rather than dismissed. Good answer. Now prove it. The first real test of that philosophy came just 3 weeks into fall semester. One of my 4th class cadets, a basic named Tommy Chen, was struggling dramatically. Failing academic classes, barely passing fitness assessments, and clearly drowning under the pressure. His flight commander recommended separation, the military term for being kicked out, arguing that Chen lacked the aptitude for academy life. I called Chen into my office on a Thursday evening, watching him stand at rigid attention, eyes forward, waiting for judgment. At ease, basic cadet Chen. Sit down. He sat stiffly on the edge of the chair, hands on knees, clearly expecting the worst. Your flight commander thinks you should be separated. Make a case for why I shouldn't sign that recommendation. His eyes widened with panic. Ma'am, I know I've been struggling. I'm trying, I swear I'm trying. It's just all so much harder than I expected. Back home, I was at the top of my class. Here, I'm barely keeping my head above water. Where's home? Small town in Oregon, ma'am. Population maybe 3,000. I was valedictorian, student body president, team captain. Everyone said I'd do great things. And now I'm failing at the thing I wanted most. I heard echoes of my own story in his words, the weight of expectations, the fear of failure, the dissonance between who you were and who you're becoming. I pulled out my own 4th class year academic records and slid them across the desk. See that grade? First engineering exam. 62%. Nearly failed. You know why? I didn't wait for him to answer. Because I was so terrified of failing that I couldn't focus on learning. I was performing for some invisible audience in my head instead of engaging with the actual material. Chen looked up at me with surprise. You almost failed a class? Almost. And then someone asked me whether I was at the academy to prove people wrong or to become a good officer. Those are different goals, Chen. One is reactive and fear-based. The other is proactive and purpose-driven. Which one are you operating from? He was quiet for a long moment. The first one, ma'am. Definitely the first one. Then here's what we're going to do. I'm not signing the separation paperwork. Yet. But I'm assigning you a mentor from the 2 degrees who struggled their 4th class year and figured it out. You're going to meet with him 3 times a week. You're going to attend dedicated study sessions. And you're going to shift your mindset from proving you belong to actually learning what you need to succeed. Clear? Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me. Thank me by graduating in 4 years. 6 months later, Chen would make Dean's List. But that night, walking back to my dorm after that meeting, I realized I'd finally internalized the lesson I'd been struggling with since I-Day. Leadership wasn't about authority or perfection. It was about seeing potential in people and creating conditions for them to develop it. The academic year accelerated with increasing intensity. Along with my squadron commander duties, I was completing my astronautical engineering senior thesis, a complex analysis of orbital mechanics for satellite deployment that consumed every spare hour I could find. I was also interviewing for my first operational assignment after commissioning, a process that would determine where I'd spend my first years as a second lieutenant. Colonel Winters at Charleston had made good on her promise, offering me a slot in her wing if I wanted it. But other opportunities emerged: intelligence work in Germany, space operations in Colorado, even a chance to attend graduate school immediately after commissioning through a prestigious fellowship program. "You're being courted," Kennedy observed one evening as we studied together in the library, now a 4-year tradition between us. She was headed to pilot training after graduation, a dream she'd nurtured since childhood. Half the Air Force wants Cadet Major Natasha Williams on their team. "It's overwhelming," I admitted. "How do I choose?" "What does your gut tell you?" My gut told me something surprising: I wanted operations. Not the prestige of graduate school or the intellectual appeal of intelligence work, but the hands-on leadership of an operational squadron where I'd be directly responsible for airmen and mission execution. I wanted to be Captain Torres, confident in the cockpit, trusted by her crew, making decisions that mattered. I selected Joint Base Charleston, accepting Colonel Winters's offer. The assignment came with a guarantee: I'd be a logistics officer supporting airlift operations, responsible for mission planning, cargo operations, and the complex coordination that kept aircraft flying and delivering critical supplies worldwide. "You're going back to Charleston?" Major Vance said when I informed her of my decision. "You could have gone anywhere, Williams." "Why there?" "Because Colonel Winters showed me what right looks like, ma'am. She leads with competence and character. I want to develop under that kind of commander. And honestly, I want to prove to myself that I can thrive in operational Air Force, not just academy environment." "You'll thrive anywhere you choose to," Major Vance said firmly. "But I respect the reasoning. Build your foundation at Charleston, and the Air Force will be yours to shape." As winter semester began and commissioning loomed just months away, an unexpected letter arrived at my campus mailbox. The return address was familiar: Riverside Heights, Texas, but the sender wasn't my mother. It was from Mrs. Hendricks, my high school guidance counselor, who'd maintained occasional contact throughout my academy years. "Dear Natasha, I hope this letter finds you well and thriving in your final semester. I'm writing with both congratulations on your upcoming commissioning and a request. The Riverside Heights School Board has asked me to coordinate a career day for our high school students, and I immediately thought of you. Would you be willing to return to speak about your journey from our small town to the Air Force Academy to commissioned officer? I know this asks you to face some difficult history. Your uncle has been vocally dismissive of your achievements among certain circles here. But Natasha, there are students at our school right now who need to see you. Who need to know that the path you've taken is real and possible. Young women, students of color, kids from families who've never considered military service, they need your story. If you're willing, we'd love to have you in April during our Spring Career Week. No pressure, but please consider it. With admiration, Patricia Hendricks. I read the letter 3 times, emotions swirling. Return to Riverside Heights? Face Uncle Raymond's territory? Risk encountering him, his dismissive comments, his prediction of my failure? But then I thought of Mrs. Hendricks, who'd believed in me when it mattered most. I thought of Mr. Moreno, who'd given me $300 he couldn't afford. I thought of every person in that community who'd supported me, encouraged me, and invested in my success. I thought of the version of myself at 17, terrified and uncertain, desperately needing proof that someone like me could make it. If I could be that proof for even one student, wasn't that worth facing my uncle's lingering shadow? I drafted my response that evening: "Mrs. Hendricks, I'd be honored to speak at Career Day. Thank you for thinking of me. Natasha." The invitation forced me to confront something I'd been avoiding. I needed to tell my mother I was coming home. We spoke every week via phone, but I'd carefully avoided discussing any visits, any return to the place where I'd been so thoroughly dismissed. "Mija, that's wonderful," my mother exclaimed when I told her about the Career Day invitation. "You're finally coming home. Will you stay with me? I'll make all your favorites, tamales, menudo, tres leches cake. Mommy, I don't know if I can stay long. Just a day or two for the speaking engagement. Because of Raymond. It wasn't a question. I don't want to cause problems. If he finds out I'm there. Let him find out. My mother's voice carried steel I rarely heard. You've earned the right to walk through this town with your head high. You've earned the right to inspire students who need inspiration. Raymond's opinion stopped mattering the day you proved him wrong by refusing to quit. She was right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were different things entirely. As April approached, my final semester consumed with thesis defense, commissioning preparation, and squadron commander duties, the Riverside Heights visit loomed larger in my mind. I'd be returning not as the dismissed niece, but as Cadet Major Williams, soon-to-be Second Lieutenant Williams, distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. The distinction should have felt empowering. Instead, it felt like armor I was constructing against anticipated attack. Kennedy noticed my increasing anxiety as the trip approached. You're spiraling again. Talk to me. What if he's there? What if he shows up at the career day and makes some scene, says something dismissive in front of everyone, proves that no matter what I've achieved, his opinion hasn't changed? Then you handle it with the same grace and professionalism you've displayed for 4 years. Natasha, you're not the girl who left that town anymore. You're a cadet major, a distinguished graduate, a future Air Force officer. His words can only hurt you if you give them power. I'm afraid I'll give them power, I admitted. I'm afraid I'll revert to that 17-year-old girl who needed his approval. You won't. You know why? Kennedy pulled out her phone and started scrolling through photos. Because look at what you've become. Look at these basics you mentored. Look at your squadron performance rankings. Look at the letter of recommendation from a wing commander. That's not luck. That's not quota. That's you, Natasha Williams, earning every single achievement through merit and determination. He doesn't get to diminish that. Not anymore. The photos documented 4 years of transformation, from terrified basic to confident cadet major, from uncertain girl to developing leader. Kennedy was right. I wasn't that person anymore. But the fear lingered, persistent as Uncle Raymond's voice in my head, whispering that the moment I returned to Riverside Heights, all my achievement would evaporate, and I'd be reduced once again to the foolish girl chasing impossible dreams. 2 weeks before the scheduled career day, I received my commissioning assignment officially. Second Lieutenant Natasha M. Williams, 437th Airlift Wing, Joint Base Charleston, South Carolina. Report date, July 15, 3 weeks after graduation. The formal orders made it real. I was going to be an officer, a leader, a commissioned member of the United States Air Force. I framed the orders and hung them on my dorm room wall, another piece of tangible proof. Another brick in the wall of achievement I'd constructed against doubt. The night before flying to Texas for the career day, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bunk reviewing my prepared remarks, checking my travel uniform for the 100th time, and wrestling with anxiety that felt disproportionate to the actual event. This was a high school career day. Not a combat deployment. Not a critical mission. Just a speech to students about possibilities and pathways. So why did it feel like I was preparing for battle? Because in some ways, I was. This was the confrontation I'd been avoiding for 4 years, returning to the place where I'd been dismissed, wearing the proof of my achievement, and claiming space I'd been told I didn't deserve. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your room is ready, Mija. So proud of you. Can't wait to see you in uniform. Te amo. I texted back, Te amo, mommy. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow. Tomorrow I'd return to Riverside Heights as Second Lieutenant-Select Williams. Tomorrow I'd face whatever awaited, supportive community, dismissive uncle, or something in between. Tomorrow I'd discover whether 4 years of achievement had truly freed me from the weight of someone else's doubt, or whether that burden would always be mine to carry. The answer, I suspected, would define more than just a career day speech. It would define who I'd become and who I still needed to be. The flight into Riverside Regional Airport felt surreal, retracing the same path I'd taken 4 years earlier in reverse, but as a completely different person. I wore my service dress uniform, the cadet major insignia on my shoulders catching light every time I shifted in my seat. The elderly woman next to me had asked about my service during boarding, and I'd given her the practiced explanation: Air Force Academy, graduating in May, assigned to Charleston. My grandson wanted to go to the academy, she'd said wistfully. Didn't get in. You must be very smart. Or very stubborn, I'd replied with a smile, thinking of all the times sheer determination had mattered more than intelligence. My mother waited at arrivals, and the moment I saw her, emotion overwhelmed me. She looked older, more gray in her hair, deeper lines around her eyes, but her smile was unchanged. She clutched me tight, not caring about the uniform or the military bearing, just holding her daughter. Let me look at you, she said, stepping back, her hands on my shoulders. Mija, you're so grown up. So strong. So beautiful in that uniform. It's just the uniform, Mommy. No. It's you. The uniform just makes visible what was always there. She grabbed my carry-on despite my protests. Come, I made all your favorites. You need to eat. You're too skinny. The drive through Riverside Heights was a study in nostalgia and dissonance. Everything looked smaller than I remembered: the diner where I'd worked, the high school where I'd studied until midnight, the streets I'd walked 1,000 times. But I was seeing it all through different eyes now, eyes trained by 4 years of discipline and challenge. My mother's duplex looked exactly the same peeling paint, the same small yard, the same worn steps I'd climbed throughout my childhood. But stepping inside felt like entering a museum of my former life. My high school photos still hung on the wall. My acceptance letter, framed now, held pride of place above the small television. You kept everything, I said, touching the frame gently. Of course. This is where your journey started. This is proof that dreams aren't foolish just because someone says they are. She disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a plate of tamales still steaming. Eat. Then rest. Tomorrow is a big day. That night, I lay in my childhood bed, too small now, the mattress worn, and stared at the ceiling I'd stared at 1,000 times before. The glow-in-the-dark stars I'd stuck up there at age 12 were still visible, faded but persistent. How many nights had I lain here dreaming of escape, of achievement, of proving I was more than my circumstances suggested? My phone buzzed. Kennedy, how's it feel being back? Me, weird. Like visiting a past life. Kennedy, remember, you're not that girl anymore. You're Cadet Major Williams. Soon to be Lieutenant Williams. Own it. The career day was scheduled for 10 a.m. at Riverside Heights High School. Mrs. Hendricks had arranged for me to speak to an assembly of juniors and seniors, about 200 students, followed by a smaller breakout session for students interested in military service specifically. I dressed carefully that morning in my mother's cramped bathroom, ensuring every element of my uniform met academy standards. Service dress blues, ribbons properly aligned, shoes mirror polished, combination cap positioned precisely. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. This wasn't the uncertain girl who'd left 4 years ago. This was an officer in training, a leader, someone who'd earned her place. You look like your grandfather, my mother said softly from the doorway, tears already forming. He would burst with pride if he could see you now. The drive to the high school was short, less than 10 minutes, but my heart hammered the entire way. What if Uncle Raymond showed up? What if students were dismissive? What if I froze, forgot my speech, embarrassed myself and validated every doubt anyone had ever expressed? Mrs. Hendricks met us at the main entrance, older but still carrying the same warm energy I remembered. Natasha. Oh my goodness, look at you. Come in, come in. The students are so excited. We've never had an academy graduate speak before. She led me through familiar hallways, past my old locker, past the classroom where I'd aced calculus, past the guidance office where she'd first suggested I consider military academies. Everything looked shabbier than I remembered, more worn, but the energy was the same. Teenagers navigating the complexity of becoming adults, teachers trying to guide them through it. The auditorium was already filling when we arrived. Students filed in with the controlled chaos of required assemblies, some engaged, some bored, some checking phones despite teacher warnings. I stood backstage, breathing deeply, running through my opening remarks. 5 minutes, Mrs. Hendricks said. Are you nervous? Terrified, I admitted. Good. That means you care. Just speak from your heart. Tell them your truth. That's all they need to hear. Principal Harrison, a new principal I didn't recognize, gave a brief introduction. Today we have the honor of welcoming back one of our own. Natasha Williams graduated from Riverside Heights just 4 years ago and is now a cadet major at the United States Air Force Academy. She'll be commissioning as a second lieutenant in May and has agreed to share her journey with us. Please welcome Cadet Major Williams. The applause was polite but not enthusiastic, standard assembly response. I walked onto the stage, my shoes clicking on the worn wooden floor, and approached the podium. 200 faces looked back at me with varying degrees of interest. I set my notes aside. Suddenly, the prepared remarks felt inadequate. 4 years ago, I sat where you're sitting now, I began, my voice steady despite my nerves. I was a senior, working at Marino's Diner 20 hours a week, helping my mom with bills, and dreaming about something bigger than this town. When I told people I was applying to the Air Force Academy, most of them were supportive. But one person, someone close to my family, told me I was chasing an impossible dream. That I'd never get in. That I didn't have what it takes. And when I did get in, he told me I'd wash out by Christmas. That people like me don't make it through places like that. The auditorium had gone quiet. I had their attention now. I almost believed him. Because doubt is powerful, especially when it comes from someone you're supposed to respect. But I also remembered something my grandfather taught me: other people's limitations aren't yours. Their inability to imagine your success doesn't diminish your potential. So I decided to go anyway, to try anyway, to risk failure rather than guarantee it by never attempting. I talked for 20 minutes, no notes, just truth. I talked about beast and recognition, about nights studying until 2 a.m., about the moment I realized I belonged not because someone granted me permission but because I'd earned my place. I talked about mentoring basics and leading a squadron and learning that leadership is about service, not status. Some of you are from families with military traditions, I continued, scanning the faces. Some of you have parents who went to college. Some of you have resources and support I never had. But some of you are like I was, first generation, uncertain, carrying doubt like a backpack full of rocks. To those students, I want to say this: the path exists. It's hard. It's terrifyingly hard. But it's real, and you can walk it if you're willing to push past the voices telling you that you can't. When I finished, the applause was different, louder, more genuine. Students stood, a standing ovation that caught me completely off guard. Mrs. Hendricks was crying openly in the front row. My mother, seated near the back, held her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. The breakout session afterward attracted 30 students, more than expected. They peppered me with questions about academy life, application processes, and military careers. A young Latina girl with nervous energy approached as the session ended. Ms. Williams? I'm Gabriella. I want to apply to the academy, but my dad says it's too hard. That I should just go to state and get a normal degree. What do I tell him? I crouched down to her eye level. Tell him that hard doesn't mean impossible. Tell him you need a chance to find out what you're capable of. And then work so hard that when you get that acceptance letter, even his doubt can't touch it. She nodded, eyes bright with determination I recognized intimately. As students filtered out, Mrs. Hendricks approached. Natasha, that was exactly what they needed to hear. Thank you for coming back, for being vulnerable, for showing them the path. Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. That's my job, seeing potential before it's obvious. Speaking of which, there's someone here who insisted on seeing you. My stomach dropped. Uncle Raymond. It had to be. He'd heard I was here and come to, what? Dismiss me one final time? Tell me I'd gotten lucky but wouldn't last in the operational Air Force? He's waiting in the parking lot, Mrs. Hendricks continued. Said he wanted to speak with you privately. I squared my shoulders, summoning 4 years of military bearing. All right. Let's get this over with. My mother grabbed my hand as we walked toward the exit. You don't have to talk to him, Mija. You don't owe him anything. I know. But maybe I need this. Maybe we both do. The parking lot was nearly empty. Most students had left for lunch. A Riverside Police Department cruiser sat in the fire lane, and leaning against it was Uncle Raymond in full uniform, arms crossed, face unreadable. We approached slowly, my mother's hand tight in mine. Raymond straightened as we got closer, his eyes moving over my uniform with an expression I couldn't decipher. Uncle Raymond, I said formally, my voice neutral. Natasha. He cleared his throat, shifting his weight uncomfortably. This wasn't the confident, dismissive man from 4 years ago. This was someone thrown off balance, uncertain. I heard you were speaking at the school. Thought we should talk. About what? I kept my tone professional, not hostile but not warm either. About what I said. 4 years ago. At your mother's place. He looked away, jaw working. I was wrong. The words hung in the air, so unexpected I almost didn't process them. Wrong about what specifically? I needed him to say it, to articulate exactly what he was acknowledging. About you. About your chances. About, he stopped, regrouping. I didn't think you'd make it. I thought you were wasting your time and embarrassing the family. I was wrong. My mother squeezed my hand, silent support. I waited, letting him sit with the admission. My son Derek, he washed out of the police academy, Raymond continued, the words clearly costing him something. Couldn't handle the pressure, couldn't maintain standards. Came home after 6 weeks. And here you are, 4 years later, about to graduate from one of the most elite institutions in the country. He stopped again, looking directly at me for the first time. I underestimated you. Badly. Part of me wanted to accept the apology, to be gracious, to heal the family wound. But another part, the part that had carried his doubt for 4 years, that had used his dismissal as fuel through every hard moment, wasn't ready to let it go that easily. You didn't just underestimate me, Uncle Raymond. You accused me of forging my acceptance letter. You told my entire family I'd fail. You made the hardest thing I've ever attempted even harder by ensuring I couldn't fall back on family support if I struggled. My voice remained steady, not angry but absolutely clear. Do you understand what that cost me? The nights I couldn't call home because I was afraid of hearing doubt. The holidays I spent alone because I couldn't afford to face you. He flinched. I didn't realize. That's the problem. You didn't think about impact, only about being right. About maintaining your position as the successful Williams, the one who made it. I took a breath, choosing my next words carefully. But here's what you need to understand, I didn't succeed despite your doubt. I succeeded because I learned to stop needing your approval. So if you're apologizing because you think I need to hear it, I don't. If you're apologizing because you need to say it, then I accept it. But it doesn't change what happened, and it doesn't mean we're suddenly going to be close. My mother gasped softly, probably shocked at my directness. But Raymond just nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair. He reached into his cruiser and pulled out an envelope. I wanted to give you this. It's a letter of recommendation for your commissioning file. From the Chief of Police. I explained what you've accomplished, how wrong I was about your potential. I don't know if it'll help, but... It won't, I interrupted, not unkindly. I already have everything I need for commissioning. But thank you for the gesture. He nodded again, sliding the envelope back into the cruiser. For a moment, we just stood there, uncle and niece, police officer and soon-to-be Air Force officer, two people separated by 4 years of hurt and pride. Your grandfather would be proud, Raymond finally said quietly. My father always saw something in you I was too blind to recognize. I'm sorry it took me this long to see it too. Me too, Uncle Raymond. Me too. He climbed into his cruiser and drove away slowly, leaving my mother and me standing in the parking lot. She turned to me with wonder in her eyes. Mija, you were so strong just now. So clear. When did you become so strong? When I stopped waiting for his permission to be who I already was. We drove home in comfortable silence, the confrontation leaving me unexpectedly at peace. I'd expected anger or triumph or vindication, but what I felt was simply closure, the final severing of a cord that had been fraying for 4 years. That evening, Mrs. Rosales and Mr. Moreno organized an impromptu gathering at the diner, a celebration of our Natasha who made it. Neighbors I'd grown up with, teachers who'd taught me, people who'd supported me in small but meaningful ways all crowded into the familiar booth-lined space, sharing food and stories and pride. To Natasha Williams, Mr. Moreno toasted with his coffee cup. Who showed us all that impossible is just a word used by people without imagination. As I looked around at these faces, my community, my foundation, my beginning, I realized something profound. Uncle Raymond's opinion had never mattered as much as I'd thought. These people, this place, this support system had been the real foundation all along. His doubt had just been noise, and I'd finally learned to tune it out. But even as I celebrated with my community, I knew the story wasn't quite finished. There was one more piece waiting, one more moment that would define exactly how far I'd come. It would arrive at my graduation, in a way I could never have anticipated. Graduation week at the Air Force Academy was a carefully choreographed celebration spanning 5 days of ceremonies, family events, and traditions that marked the transition from cadet to officer. My mother had flown in early, determined not to miss a single moment. Kennedy's family had invited her to join them for several events, and she'd become an unofficial adoptee of their boisterous clan. Your mama is delightful, Kennedy's father, a retired Army colonel, told me after the award ceremony where I'd received recognition as a distinguished graduate. She raised a hell of an officer. The awards kept accumulating: academic excellence, military training, outstanding performance, leadership recognition. Each one was announced publicly, my name echoing through assembly halls and auditoriums. Each one represented countless hours of work, sacrifice, and determination. Each one was tangible proof that merit, not luck or quotas, had brought me here. But the moment I'd remember most vividly happened on graduation morning itself. The ceremony was scheduled for 1,000 hours at Falcon Stadium, the massive outdoor venue where 30,000 family members and guests would watch approximately 1,000 cadets commission as second lieutenants. The forecast called for clear skies and 70-degree weather, perfect Colorado spring conditions. We assembled in our staging area at 0800, checking each other's uniforms with meticulous attention. This was our final formation as cadets. In a few hours, we'd be officers. The weight of that transformation felt almost physical. How are you feeling? Kennedy asked as we stood in our squadron formation, waiting for the march to begin. Like I'm standing at the edge of something enormous. Terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. That's exactly right. We earned this, Natasha. Every single moment of the past 4 years led here. The processional began, 1,000 cadets marching in perfect formation into the stadium as the band played and the crowd roared. My mother was somewhere in those stands, probably crying already. I kept my eyes forward, my bearing military, but inside I was that 17-year-old girl reading an acceptance letter in a cramped kitchen, hardly daring to believe it was real. The ceremony itself was a blur of speeches, traditions, and formal protocols. The superintendent's address about service and sacrifice. The class president's remarks about our shared journey. The formal oath of office that would transform us from cadets to officers. But as we approached the moment of commissioning, when we'd recite the oath and be officially commissioned, an unexpected disruption occurred. A commotion near one of the stadium entrances drew attention. Security personnel were speaking with someone, voices raised, gestures indicating a problem. The ceremony paused momentarily as officials addressed whatever situation was developing. Then I heard it, a voice cutting through the crowd noise, familiar and grating. "I need to speak with Cadet Williams. It's a family emergency. I'm her uncle, Riverside Police Department." My stomach dropped. Uncle Raymond. Here. Now. At my graduation. 2 Air Force Security Forces members approached our formation, speaking quietly with our squadron air officer commanding. Major Vance turned, scanning our ranks until her eyes found mine. She gestured for me to step forward. "Cadet Major Williams, there's a situation. Your uncle is claiming a family emergency and insisting he needs to speak with you immediately. He's being persistent." My mind raced. Family emergency? My mother was fine, she was literally in the stands. What could possibly? "Ma'am, I don't know what he's talking about. My mother is here. There's no emergency." Major Vance's expression hardened. "That's what I suspected. He's disrupting a military ceremony and falsely claiming official police business. I'm having him removed, but he's insisting on speaking with you first. It's your call." Every instinct screamed to refuse, to let security remove him, to not let him disrupt this moment I'd earned. But another part of me, the part that had just confronted him in Riverside Heights, that had finally achieved closure, knew this needed to end definitively. "I'll speak with him briefly, ma'am. But I'm not leaving formation. He can approach me here." Major Vance nodded approvingly. "I'll have security escort him to the formation edge. You have 2 minutes." Uncle Raymond was escorted to the perimeter of our formation, still in his Riverside police uniform, looking wildly out of place among Air Force personnel. His face was flushed, his expression a mixture of desperation and something I couldn't identify. "Natasha, I need to talk to you. I flew here overnight, I couldn't let you graduate without." "Uncle Raymond, there is no family emergency. My mother is fine. You're disrupting my commissioning ceremony. What could possibly be so important?" "I made a mistake. At your mother's house last week, I apologized but I couldn't." He was struggling, the words coming out in fragments. "I need you to know that I'm proud of you. That I was wrong about everything. That you're..." "Stop." I kept my voice low but firm, aware that my classmates were listening, that officers were watching. "I heard your apology last week. I accepted it. But this? Showing up here uninvited, claiming a false emergency, disrupting a military ceremony? This isn't about me. This is about you needing some kind of absolution I can't give you. I just wanted to see you graduate. To be here for this moment. You had 4 years to be here for moments that mattered. You chose differently. I don't hold that against you anymore, but I also don't owe you access to this achievement. You need to leave." Security began moving toward us, but before they could intervene, a new voice cut through the tension. "What is the meaning of this disruption?" I turned to see a full-bird colonel approaching, someone I didn't recognize, wearing command insignia and an expression of barely contained irritation. Uncle Raymond straightened instinctively, responding to superior military authority. "Sir, I'm Officer Raymond Williams, Riverside Police Department. I'm this cadet's uncle, and I needed to speak with her before. You're disrupting a United States Air Force commissioning ceremony by falsely claiming a family emergency." The colonel's voice was ice. "That's grounds for arrest on federal property. I suggest you leave immediately before I have security forces detain you." "Sir, I just wanted to." "I don't care what you wanted. Cadet Major Williams, do you wish to press charges for this disruption?" Every eye was on me. This was it, the ultimate moment of power, the complete reversal. I could have Uncle Raymond arrested, prosecuted, humiliated publicly in the same way he'd humiliated me 4 years ago at that family gathering. But looking at him, this man who'd spent 4 years being wrong, who'd flown overnight in a desperate attempt to witness my success, who clearly couldn't reconcile his predictions with my reality, I felt only pity. "No, sir. No charges. Just escort him out, please." The colonel nodded. Wise decision, Cadet Major. Compassion is a leadership quality. He turned to Raymond. You have 60 seconds to leave this stadium, or I'm having you arrested for trespassing and disruption of a military ceremony. Your choice. Raymond looked at me one final time, something like anguish in his expression. Natasha, I'm sorry. For all of it. I know. Now please go. Security escorted him toward the exit as I returned to my position in formation. Kennedy squeezed my hand briefly, a violation of military bearing, but necessary. Around me, classmates whispered support. Major Vance caught my eye and nodded approval. The ceremony resumed. As if the universe wanted to emphasize the contrast between that disruption and my actual achievement, the very next moment was the one I'd been waiting for. Will all commissioning candidates please rise and raise your right hand, the superintendent commanded. 1,000 cadets stood as one, right hands raised. I, state your name, having been appointed a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. I, Natasha Marie Williams, having been appointed a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force. The oath continued, each phrase a commitment, a promise, a transformation. My voice joined 1,000 others, but inside I was speaking directly to that 17-year-old girl who'd been told she'd never make it, who'd been accused of forging her acceptance letter, who'd been dismissed as a dreamer chasing impossibilities. We made it. We're here. And nobody can ever take this away from us. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. In the stands, my mother was crying. I could feel it even though I couldn't see her. Somewhere, probably escorted fully off the premises by now, Uncle Raymond was witnessing from a distance the moment he'd predicted would never come. And that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which I am about to enter, so help me God. Congratulations, class of 2009. You are now officers in the United States Air Force. The crowd erupted. Caps flew into the air in the traditional celebration, 1,000 white covers arcing against blue Colorado sky. I threw mine with everything I had, watching it soar and tumble, symbolic of releasing the past and embracing the future. But the moment that would define the entire day, the moment that would validate 4 years of struggle and prove definitively how far I'd come, happened during the reception immediately following. As newly commissioned officers mingled with families, I was speaking with my mother and Kennedy's family when I noticed a small group of very senior officers approaching. They wore stars on their shoulders, generals, not colonels. My heart rate increased. What could generals possibly want with a brand new second lieutenant? The officer in front, a 2-star general with an impressive array of ribbons, stopped directly in front of me. I saluted immediately. Second Lieutenant Williams? Yes, ma'am. At ease. I'm Major General Patricia Thornton, Commander of 2nd Air Force. I understand you had some excitement during the ceremony. My stomach sank. Was I in trouble for the disruption? Ma'am, I apologize if my uncle's behavior. Your uncle's behavior is not your responsibility, Lieutenant. I'm here because your air officer commanding submitted your name for a special recognition I award annually to one graduating officer who exemplifies resilience, leadership, and character under pressure. Traditionally, I announced this during the ceremony, but given the disruption, I'm doing it now. Second Lieutenant Natasha Williams, you are this year's recipient of the Resilience Leadership Award. Congratulations. She extended her hand, and as I shook it, fighting back tears, she leaned in slightly. I read your file, Lieutenant. First-generation college student, worked throughout high school, overcame significant family obstacles to get here. You represent the best of what the Air Force Academy produces, not just competence, but character. Well done. Thank you, ma'am. I'm honored. As General Thornton moved on, my mother grabbed me, openly sobbing now. Mija, did that just happen? Did a general just give you an award? Apparently, yes. Kennedy appeared with her entire family. Natasha. That was incredible. Did you know about this? I had no idea. What I also didn't know, what I wouldn't discover until later, was that the colonel who'd confronted Uncle Raymond wasn't just any officer. He was Colonel James Winters, Colonel Sarah Winters's husband, who'd come specifically to see me commission after his wife had told him about my upcoming assignment to Charleston. He found me during the reception, pulling me aside briefly. "Lieutenant Williams, I wanted to introduce myself properly. I'm Colonel James Winters. My wife Sarah commands the 437th. She's told me a lot about you. Sir, thank you for intervening earlier. That situation was handled with remarkable maturity on your part. You had every right to press charges and chose compassion instead. That's exactly the kind of judgment Sarah values in her officers. She's looking forward to having you at Charleston." He paused, his expression softening slightly. "For what it's worth, I overheard what your uncle said to you. About being proud, about being wrong. Sometimes the people who doubt us the loudest are struggling with their own limitations. You don't owe him forgiveness, but you also don't need to carry his doubt anymore. You proved everything that needed proving." Those words settled over me like a benediction. He was right. I had proven everything, to myself, to my mother, to everyone who'd supported me. Uncle Raymond's belated recognition was irrelevant to the reality I'd created. The rest of graduation day passed in a joyful blur. The formal dinner. The final goodbyes to classmates who'd become family. The bittersweet recognition that this chapter, the academy years, was closing while a new one waited to open. That night, back in my dorm room for the last time, I sat on my stripped bed and reflected on the journey. 4 years ago, I'd arrived terrified and uncertain, carrying the weight of someone else's doubt. Today, I'd commissioned as a second lieutenant, received recognition from a 2-star general, and handled a confrontation with grace I wouldn't have possessed even a year ago. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Lieutenant Williams, this is Officer Derek Williams, Jr., your cousin. Dad told me what happened at your graduation. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how our family treated you. And congratulations. You earned all of it. Derek." I stared at the message for a long moment before responding, "Thank you, Derek. That means a lot. Good luck with everything." A second text arrived almost immediately. "Dad's taking early retirement from the force. Mom says it's health, but I think today broke something in him. Realizing how wrong he was, how much he missed. Just thought you should know." I set my phone down, processing this information. Uncle Raymond retiring. The weight of being wrong finally too much to carry. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt sad, for him, for the relationship we'd never have, for the years wasted on pointless conflict. But mostly, I felt free. Free from needing his approval, free from carrying his doubt, free from measuring my worth against his narrow expectations. The final text of the night came from my mother. "Mija, today was the proudest day of my life. Your father would be so proud. Grandpa Sullivan would be so proud. I am so proud. You showed everyone, including yourself, who Natasha Williams truly is. An officer. A leader. A woman of strength and character. Te amo forever, Mommy." I fell asleep that night in my academy dorm room for the last time, no longer Cadet Major Williams but Second Lieutenant Williams, no longer proving something to others but living into the identity I'd forged through 4 years of relentless challenge and growth. The girl who'd been told she'd never make it had not only made it, she'd exceeded every expectation except her own. Because deep down, beneath all the doubt and fear and uncertainty, some part of me had always known this moment would come. Some part of me had always known I'd stand at graduation in uniform with silver bars on my shoulders and generals shaking my hand and a future full of possibility stretching ahead. Some part of me had always known that Uncle Raymond's voice was just noise, and the only voice that mattered was the one inside me that kept whispering, even in the darkest moments, "Keep going. You belong here. Prove it." And I had. 3 weeks later, I reported to Joint Base Charleston as Second Lieutenant Natasha M. Williams, ready to begin my career in operational Air Force. The journey from that cramped duplex in Riverside Heights to this moment had been longer and harder than I could have imagined. But standing on the flight line at Charleston, watching C-17s take off into Carolina blue sky, I knew with absolute certainty that every moment of struggle had been worth it. Not because Uncle Raymond had finally acknowledged he was wrong. Not because I'd received awards and recognition. But because I'd discovered who I truly was beneath the doubt and fear, and she was someone worth becoming. The woman Grandpa Sullivan had always known I could be. The officer my mother had sacrificed everything to help me become. The leader I'd forged myself into through 4 years of refusing to quit. Second Lieutenant Natasha Williams. Officer in the United States Air Force. Living proof that the only impossible dreams are the ones we stop chasing. And I was just getting started. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.